Welcome to PetAbility. I'm your host, Kathy Simons.
And I'm your host, Chris Cranston. Our podcast provides interviews and information to help your pets live their best lives.
Good afternoon, Chris. How are you?
A very good afternoon, Kathy. I am well, and yourself?
Doing pretty good. It's not too bad here for a New England day in the winter time. It's like 50 degrees, a little rainy and gray, but
yeah,
not too cold. So
yeah, and our next guests are in California, so we should not be complaining about rain because
I know
severe drought in the western United States.
Sorry. I know, but I'm really super excited to talk with our guests today. You know, when you and I first sat down and we talked about the vision that we had for this podcast and the topics that we wanted to talk about and things that we felt that we wanted to share with our audience, Pets with Amputation was on the top of that list. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
We're going through and we're like, this is a really important topic. So I'm really happy that we were able to connect with Jim Nelson and Rene Agredano from Tripawds.com because they're a wealth of information. And the thing that is so great for me to go to their website and look is it really is a community. It's a community. And much like me, who I belong to the blind dog community because I've had several blind dogs now, it's just like that with the tripod community, that people are helping each other and reaching out to each other and supporting each other. And amputation can be a tough topic to talk about, Chris. I mean, there's a lot of emotions around it. I think there's also a lot of myths and misconceptions about pets with missing limbs. And if you remember, one of our very first shows that we did, we talked to a gentleman named Dominic Scudera. And Dominic had 3 dogs, and each dog only had 2 legs, right?
No,
and so one dog,
awesome.
I know, and he had a dog with no back legs, which I think was lucky. And then Deuce has a front leg and a back leg, but only on the same side.
Same side.
Same side. I know. It's amazing. And their other dog had no front limbs. Mm-hmm. And Dominic, he spoke so passionately about these dogs, just like living and just sharing their lives together and just really wanting to show the world that these dogs, can live happy, joyful, interesting lives with amputations.
Absolutely.
And yeah. And I remember when my career started really, when I was really a young rehabber, one of my very first patients, a young chocolate lab, came to us with a neurologic injury. And it was irreversible neurologic damage. And so she was unable to use that leg, and it would drag on the ground. It was her front leg, and she would drag on the ground. And so I was able to go in with that dog during the amputation and assist the surgeon. And my head is just filled with so many questions. This is a big dog. How is she going to get around? How is she going to go to the bathroom? How is she going to go for walks? And how are people going to be able to handle her? And then I had this feeling of sort of projecting my human emotions onto her. How is she going to feel? Is she going to be sad? Is she going to be angry? How is this going to affect her emotionally? So, fast forward 2 weeks later, she comes in for suture removal, and I kind of catch, we lock eyes. I see her in the waiting room, we lock eyes, and she just jumps right up. And with her one foot in the front, just like hits me square in the chest, and I kind of slide down to the ground, and she jumps on me and she starts kissing me and licking me. And we're just sort of like rolling around and wrestling, like labs do. Right. And it struck me right then and there. This leg was painful. It wasn't functional, and it was burdensome, and it was gone. And she was happy and joyful and back to being herself. Mm-hmm. So it was a real feel good moment. It was a real good teaching moment for me as well. So that's one of the reasons I felt that it was so, great to talk with Jim and Rene. So I'm not going to delay it any longer. So without further ado, please welcome Jim and Rene.
Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
So I'd just like to jump right in. Jim, can you tell us the story of Jerry? Because really he was the catalyst and inspiration for Tripawds.com.
He was. Tripawds.com is what it is because of our first dog, Jerry G. Dog. And we were entrepreneurs working at home and got to the point where we had a dog, and for 8 years he was our chief fun officer. Basically, we'd go to the beach and he'd let us to know, to step away from the desk once in a while and get us to enjoy life to the fullest. And at age 8, we were often hiking and going up in the mountains, and we came back from a short trip on the Pacific Coast Trail into some lakes for the weekend, and we came back and he jumped out of the truck, and as soon as he hit the ground, he let out this yelp that was just blood-curdling. I'll never forget it. And we thought he was tired. He's 8 years old. He went on a long hike, and we took him to our vet who we trusted, who insisted it was arthritis. And, dogs are so good at hiding their pain that it took a number of weeks of him looking like he was limping and not limping and going on NSAIDs and trying a different medication. We trusted our vet, and we had numerous visits where we weren't sure what was going on. One day, a vet tech followed us out to the truck and told us, "You might want another opinion." And that changed our world, because we went to a vet who acknowledged they didn't know what was going on, and they saw something funny on the x-ray. So they said, maybe you should go see an oncologist. And we went to UC Davis and discovered that dogs get cancer. We didn't even know dogs got cancer at the time, and they suggested amputation as a way to help improve quality of life, and that just blew us away. We were dumbfounded, and how would he pee? Would he ever swim again? That sort of thing. And we proceeded with the amputation, and he literally bounced back. He jumped out came hopping down the hallway out of the hospital, and we were at a point in our lives where we wanted to pay him back for everything he gave us as our CFO. And Rene had this great idea one day, said, let's sell the business, let's sell the house, let's buy an RV, and let's hit the road. And we decided to take a road trip with Jerry, because he was given, 6 months, maybe a year, with osteosarcoma in his shoulder, and he ended up living 2 years on the road with us with cancer. And by that time, we had started a little blog, and I started discussion forums, and then added a live chat, and Tripawds blew up. And you mentioned something earlier that was really important and relevant, and it's that sense of community. Because sure, we make Tripawds work, but it's the power of community that really helps make it be the great resource it's become.
I agree. I belong to a lot of blind dog forums, because I've had and had several blind dogs. And there's nothing quite like talking to someone else who's going through the experience. There's nothing quite like getting someone who's been there.
Right. Rene, can you elaborate a little bit more and tell our audience if they're not familiar, what Tripawds is, besides a community, or maybe how it's a community? I think it started back in 2006. And,
It did.
Yeah. So elaborate, please.
Sure. So, we started this blog because we just wanted to get our emotions out. It was such a difficult thing to go through. You feel like you're all alone, and nobody else will understand. And especially because you often have, anybody going through it often has friends and family that aren't exactly supportive of the idea. Even now, a lot of people will call you selfish for wanting to amputate a leg that is slowly disintegrating. I don't understand, but there are people out there who do that. And so we were kind of venting through this little blog, and we started getting questions from other people who were finding us on the web, and they were going through the exact same thing. And they had questions about amputation. Yeah, they were emailing. There was no social media back then. And, we only had our experience to go off of. So we couldn't offer them more than emotional support and point them to some links and things like that. But what Jim did was he installed discussion forums, which enabled people to talk directly to one another through these forums. And they grew so fast that we couldn't believe there were so many people around the world going through this. We had somebody from Israel join us, another person from the UK, lots of people from the States. And it became this place where people could come and not be judged, and not be judged no matter what treatment they decided. Sometimes amputation isn't the path that they take, and that's okay too. We get that. It's not always the right decision for every animal. So, we didn't even have to say it really, but we created this safe place where you can come and vent and share your experience with no judgment. And that's what we love most, and I think that's what's kept it growing. So in addition to the discussion forums, we have a live chat room. We have member blogs. We host over 1,800 blogs where people can come and write stories about their pets. Sometimes they're really extensive blogs, and sometimes they're only a page or two, but it's a place where people can do what we did and just get it all out there. We also, several years later, we started the Tripawds Foundation. So that is a 501c3 charity. And the reason we did that was because we wanted to be able to help people more directly. So now the foundation has programs like we will chip in for the cost of amputation surgery for somebody who's low income and qualifies for the program. We will cover the cost of a first rehabilitation therapy consultation for any tripod, whether they're a brand new tripod or an older tripod. Our goal is to get people to experience professionals like yourself so that they can understand what a tripod needs, and not just in general, but what their specific tripod needs. Yep. So we'll pay up to $200 to anybody who goes and sees a credentialed therapist. That's how passionate we are about rehab.
I just want to interrupt here because I feel like Kathy and I have to woot woot on that. When we reached out to you, that was an initial response what from you guys was, and we even support, having a first time consultation, believe, wholeheartedly in rehabilitation. And I want to touch on that a little bit more later on in the podcast and some specifics, but thank you so much two rehabbers. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. And, rehab wasn't even on our radar back when Jerry lost his leg. It was 2006, very early days of that area of practice. And we didn't even know it really existed until something happened. And
we played Frisbee with our front leg tripod dog.
I'm sure he loved it.
He did.
He loved doing what he always did. And, part of the problem is that, and this still happens, is that veterinarians are so well-intentioned, and they tell people, just let your dog go be a dog and do what they did before. Well, we like to say yes, but, to an extent. Right. And so we did. We let Jerry go on long walks and run on the beach and catch Frisbees. And then he landed incorrectly, and we thought he had a blown cruciate. That is... Yeah, it was incredibly scary, especially because we were on the road by then, and we were in southern Colorado. We happened to find a veterinary acupuncturist, and it was early days back then too, but she knew exactly what to do. She treated him. It was just, she called it a partial tear. It healed. It was great. Awesome. But after that, we just decided we need to find out more about what we can do to help dogs like Jerry live healthy, safe, injury-free lives on 3. And that is a major part of our mission as Tripawds and Tripawds Foundation.
One of the other things in the foundation that really touched my heart was the Tripawds Rescue Fund. Can you explain a little bit about that? Because I volunteer for a rescue and namely work with cats out here. And I did want to emphasize, we've talked about your dog, Jerry, but really Tripawds supports any 3-legged animal. In fact, I saw a little domestic rat in your photo gallery, and but certainly cats and dogs. So yeah, talk a little bit about the rescue fund, please.
Certainly. So there's been rabbit members and someone with a one-legged chicken, and but the rescue fund in particular, we restructured last year to help rescues directly with a spin-off of our amputation surgery assistance program. So the ASAP fund helps pay for amputation surgery for income-qualified families so that we can help prevent some economic euthanasia out there. But so many animals come into the shelter with a broken leg or need an amputation, and we started to notice so many rescues actively fundraising on social media that we decided to create a matching grant program. So the Tripawds Rescue Fund is available to reimburse or to actually match up to $500 in funds raised by an animal rescue who's actively raising funds for amputation surgery.
For a specific animal.
Sure, for a specific animal. So in a given month, we do that twice a month, and it's first come, first served, and any rescue who applies and shows us that they have a fundraiser going for Spot, who needs an amputation because he was hit by a car, or some kitty that needs an amputation, as soon as they hit that number, $500, we will immediately send them another $500. So the Tripawds Rescue Fund is just out there to help more rescues get those animals in their care the help they need.
You guys have not left a stone unturned. You've thought of everything. And I just want to emphasize, because I did read on your website that it is the largest online community for three-legged pets and their people. It's free to register and create an account.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you talked about the personal blogs, and one thing that you didn't mention was, it is a way for people to also just document their journey, how it started and where they're going, and upload all those photos and videos and get them out there to others for posterity. And
and there's a whole section too on like gear and equipment for these tripod dogs, toe grips, harnesses, blankets, jackets, footwear. So there's a lot of great stuff on there as well for your dog's needs.
Right. And what I noticed, we're hijacking your podcast, you guys, that a lot of things in your gear section are for all dogs, but they can be especially useful and helpful, for the tripods because of their challenges. So, some of the well-constructed harnesses, and you have a life vest on there. We just interviewed the ladies at Heads Up Watercolor, SaveDogsFromDrowning.com, and it's a really cool tool as well. We actually talked about amputees on their show, on our podcast. So, Kathy, I have had the pleasure of doing therapeutic swims with dogs that have had an amputation, and maybe they're not even seeing me because of that amputation at this point. Maybe they have arthritis or what have you. But I have noticed that many dogs that are missing a front limb especially have an increased effort to keep their head above water. They're really bobbing in that water, only having that single front limb as they stroke. So as the name implies, Heads Up Pets Watercolors, it does a fantastic job of not only keeping their heads up, but their ears out of the water, their mouth out of the water, and that nose out of the water.
And that's what makes the Heads Up Pets Watercolor unique. This will keep your dog's head and nose above the water. So this is good for dogs who are amputees, but it's good for all dogs. Oh. So if you're thinking you would like to purchase a Heads Up Pets Watercolor, use the promo code PETPOD22. That's PETPOD 22, capital letters.
That may be something that you guys want to consider adding. And then you even got into exercise equipment, which of course is Kathy and my jam. Mm-hmm. And enrichment and puzzle toys, which we always talk about as well. And then, maybe in the latter stages, some of the strollers and wagons, or depending on the age and the comorbidities of the pet that gets the amputation, a stroller or wagon helps them to remain engaged in the community. And so, we're all about that. So again, tons of stuff on the website.
Thank you for noticing that, because one of the greatest complaints, or really the only complaint we've received over the year, is that we have so much information, so many resources, so, just too much almost in some cases. There's the podcast, you talk about that whole section on gear, there's another whole section about nutrition, supplements, and, and then the whole anti-cancer thing. There's just so much out there that we created a page at tripawds.com/start. And that just sums up the entire community and how to access all these resources and assistance programs.
One of the resources too is books, both, paperback, hardcover, but ebooks that are resources. And, we can talk about those now if you'd like.
Oh, sure. Well, the ebooks came out of a desire to save people the time of digging through the website because, like Jim said, a lot of people get overwhelmed. It is overwhelming. You're dealing with that decision, or you've just made that decision, and then you have all this information being thrown at you. Everything that's in the ebooks is also on the website, which you can access at no charge. We do sell the ebooks. And it's basically a consolidation of all of our best of articles and information. And where we get that information from is, one thing I wanted to mention is that we are not rehab vets, we are not vets, but we are journalists by background. So when we decided to start growing tripods, we said, well, let's talk to the experts. Let's get that information from the people who know way more than we do. So a lot of our articles are from veterinary oncologists, from rehab therapists, from you name it, and a lot of different people in the therapy world and veterinary world. Anyhow, so the book features interviews with people like that, and so does the podcast. And we love learning. We love learning about what we can do to help three-legged dogs and cats live better lives. And the information's always changing, like, for example, with prosthetics. Prosthetics, in our early days of tripods, we said, dogs do fine. Why do they need a prosthetic? Well, after having a rear-legged German Shepherd missing one back leg for 12 years, we now see how well prosthetics can help. They can help an animal have a better quality of life. The technology is getting better and better all the time.
If they're good candidates.
If they're good candidates. And another one of our goals is to make sure people have that information before they decide to amputate. If they're lucky enough to have time on their side and they can do the research and talk to an orthopedic veterinarian, they can find out whether or not that dog or cat even will be a good candidate for a prosthesis. Because unfortunately, with all of the great devices out there, not a lot of people understand that pets aren't always good candidates. If you take too much of the limb, if you take the entire limb, good luck. They probably won't be able to use one. So we like to get Tripawds information out to veterinary clinics and other practitioners so that they have that when the bomb is dropped to the client. They can say, okay, here's some information for you. If you're thinking you might want to use a prosthetic for your pet, let's talk about that. Let's see where we can go and get that information for you.
And one of the ways the foundation helps do that is we offer free pet amputation client education brochures, these materials, to any clinic. And anyone can go out to tripawds.org/outreach and request these free brochures. And we send them, we hope they don't do a lot of amputations, so that we send them a dozen or a couple dozen, and then they can request more anytime. And this is just, it's a pamphlet that's been vet reviewed with some questions and answers and success stories and points people to the community resources so that they don't feel lost and alone when they're handed that bag of medication and an e-collar and sent home.
And then, you're sort of lost and on your own, and you're right. It's very interesting to see and very exciting to see how medicine is changing and how therapy is changing and how prosthetics are being incorporated into our pets, not just dogs, but cats and so forth. And when I first started as a veterinary technician, many eons, probably 85 or 86, if a dog had an osteosarcoma, we were pretty excited if that dog lived 3 months, right? And now we're seeing dogs that have lived a year, 18 months, 2 years, and good quality life. And sometimes we're incorporating, prosthetics, and also we've incorporated physical therapy. And so the more we know, the more we grow.
Oh, absolutely. And we actually have a member who just donated to Tripawds Foundation a few days ago. Their dog, Billy, is now 7 years post-amputation for osteosarcoma.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
It is. We see stories like that quite a bit. Not everyone is as fortunate, but with immunotherapy out there now, I mean, these stories happen more and more. And before, if you had a dog with osteosarcoma and you were lucky enough that dog was a candidate for a prosthetic, you were in a race against time. Now, with dogs being able to live a little bit longer than before, you might actually get to that prosthetic and train the dog to use it. They make a huge difference. And one of the people who convinced us of that was Martin Kaufman from Ortho.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We've interviewed Martin.
We love Martin.
Awesome. He's awesome. And he really convinced us. He said, pets can do well on 3 legs, but they can do awesome if they have a prosthetic. Yeah. And he was so right, because now we've seen it. We've seen it with our own eyes.
Martin is something, man. I had a goat that had a contracted leg, and so it basically was stuck in this position, like flexed, and he really wasn't a candidate for amputation. And so the vets, they said, you should euthanize him. And we were like, no, let's call Martin. And Martin made him an orthotic. And Jerry is now like 2 years in with his.
Named Jerry.
Also named Jerry, right? And he's on I think he's on some of our website stuff, or on some of our Instagram stuff. And now he's a 4-legged goat, and he's doing all kinds of goat stuff. So I love people that can think like this. And I love that Martin can think like this, and that he can think of the biomechanics and how animals move and how they should have their prosthetic. And it's just incredible to be able to do that.
And so let's again give a shout out to Martin Kaufman, and he's at orthopets.com.
Yes.
Orthopets.
Definitely. Martin taught us something very important early on in one of our early Tripawds interviews. We were actually at Colorado State University, and we were there with our dog Wyatt, and we met Martin and decided to do an interview on the spot. And he told us, he said, tripods can be awesome, but they can be more awesome with a prosthetic. But he was a proponent for what he called save the flipper. So he taught us that dogs that are born with limb differences and may have what he referred to as a flipper, don't proceed with the amputation. Talk to your vet ahead of time, get in touch with orthopets, and save the flipper, he said, because
save the flipper.
Save the flipper. And that was reinforced by one of the leading orthopedic surgeons in the world that we met years later, Dr. Marcel Little, who has done internal, prosthetic implants. But he taught us and reinforced that the more articulating joints you have on a limb, the better the candidate is for prosthetics. So many times people join our community after the amputation, and one of their first questions is, what about a prosthetic? And we really want to get people out there to ask that question beforehand, because if you can get 1 or 2 joints to actually move that prosthetic device, you're going to be much better off. There is devices out there that are somewhat more of a brace.
It's a brace. But speaking of that, I just want to jump in a little bit more about prosthetics, because one thing that we're seeing more and more is a lot of DIY prosthetics. And, with 3D printing being so accessible now, we really encourage people. They're so well-intentioned when they say, I'm going to make my dog a prosthetic, or my cat, or I'm going to make them a wheelchair. And that's another reason we started the rehab reimbursement grant, was because we learned from experts that, if you don't understand the biomechanics of your animal, you could do more harm than good with one of these homemade devices. So it's another reason why we really want people to get to a rehab therapist before they put their animal in something like that.
And we'll pay for it.
Right. Yeah. Can we switch? Can we switch gears a little bit and get into a little bit of the emotional aspect of amputation, and from the owner's perspective, but also kind of touching maybe even on how. And I know we can't say for sure how animals feel, but I know if anybody's lived with a dog or a cat or a bird, then we know that they do have emotions and they express them. What's the emotional piece for people? Because I know, like you said, it's devastating and it's overwhelming for owners. Is there anything that we can tell owners that they can do to sort of prep for that amputation? I'm sure that's on your website.
Well, there's 2 aspects of that. Like you said, there's the emotional part, and then there's the material part, the things you can do around the house. So we have a series of articles called our What to Expect series. If you go to tripawds.com/tag/what to expect, they are up there, and they give people a rundown. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy a lot of gear right away. The best thing you can do physically is to lay down traction in your house as much as you can. Throw rugs with rubber backing, yoga mats, whatever you can do to make it easier for your animal to get around. For cats, you want to put more perches up there for later on after recovery. But in the meantime, you want to create a safe space for your cat to recover in a spare bedroom where they can't get into trouble underneath furniture, that kind of thing. For dogs, an X-pen in the living room or wherever they're happiest being around you. Really, there's not a lot that you need to do right away. Just you can kind of tiptoe into it at first because you're already dealing with your own emotions. But the emotional part, we tend to find that there's an old saying that says animals handle amputation way better than we do, we humans. And it's so true. They do bounce back, sometimes not as fast as we would hope, but they do. And in general, 2 to 3 weeks, and you start to see the little sparkle come back, and you realize, okay, we're going to get through this. This is going to be okay. A lot of times, though, it's the pet parent who has the most difficulty. I'd say most times, pretty much. And in fact, a gentleman yesterday just wrote about his grief over his lab losing a leg because he said, I just keep thinking about all the things we're not going to be able to do anymore. I'm grateful my dog is still with me, but I keep thinking how different our life is going to be, and I'm really sad about it. And what I told him was, I said, I felt the exact same way, so I know other people do as well. I thought about all the hikes that we weren't going to be able to take and how, well, now I know throwing a Frisbee is a bad idea. But what I told him was, if all the things that you would do to modify a dog or cat's life after they lose a leg are things that you would do for an animal when they become a senior. So things like the traction and moderating their activity and not throwing a Frisbee 5 feet in the air. These are all things we do for senior pets. So if you're fortunate enough to have an animal live into those years, you're going to do them anyways, only now you're just going to do them a little bit sooner. And you also need to remember that to a dog, there's more to life than throwing a ball. I know it's kind of hard to convince some people about that, but you can do so many more things with your dog than going for walks and throwing a ball. Interactive brain games we're huge fans of, whether you buy Nina Addison puzzles or you make your own. But playing with brain games in your animal, cats too, cats will play with them too. That's a form of activity that is so good for the animal. It creates more engagement with you, and it keeps their bodies safe from injury over time. It's not to say they can't have any physical activity. It's just tone it down a little. It's
just different. It's different. We have to find something a little bit different to interact, a way to interact with them. And one of the things Chris and I often tell people with dogs that have some type of impairment like that is try nose work. All you need for nose work really is your nose. And there are lots of dogs out there that are doing like scent work and nose work that have 3 legs or that are blind or that are deaf. And those things are so much fun because even just getting the camaraderie of the group, that you're with doing the nose work is fun for you. And it's really exciting for the dog, and it's mental energy expended, right? So maybe not so much, maybe the dog's not running and going for a 10-mile hike, but that mental energy that's expended is going to be tiring for the dog. And it's great for bonding with your dog.
Yeah. I love how you framed it, Rene, and I never thought of this before. I'm going to use it. I'm going to steal your thunder here. When you said that it's just kind of accelerating what you would do for an aging pet anyway. That is brilliant to think of it that way. And, I'm often preaching to people, focus on what they can do. Don't focus on what they can't, in any circumstance. I mean, obviously, Kathy and I are, seeing so many pets that are, differently able, maybe temporarily, after cruciate surgery, or, maybe they have, a diagnosis that's progressive and we're going to have to make accommodations over time. But, just it's difficult, I think, to stay in the moment and again, appreciate, what they can do. And I think that's one of your big take home messages with your new book, Be More Dog, right?
It is, and if I could just follow up for a moment on the coming home part, and we like to call it adapting to the new normal, and it's not like post-amputation life is worse, it's just different. You need to look at how you're going to enjoy life and be your best health advocate you can for your pet, because it's our responsibility to make sure they don't overdo it like we did with Jerry and they end up damaging one of their spare legs. But coming back to the emotions for a minute, having done this for 12 years, the worst recoveries I've seen have been with the members who are freaking out and hand feeding their dog and carrying them everywhere and doting to them, hand and foot. A little tough love goes a long way. You got to focus on healing the body and be a strong, balanced pack leader so that your pet understands that life is normal and will continue to be normal. Yep. If you freak out and worry and start sleeping on the bed, which on the floor, which a lot of people do, and it can help them, but if you start changing up life all of a sudden, your dog's going to wonder why. When Jerry hopped out of the hospital, he adjusted his stance, he adjusted his gait, and went on with life. And it's our job to help them do that, and it's why one of our biggest takeaways, like you were saying, is to be more dog. Because over time, we realized that by following our dog's lead, we can cope with that recovery better. Because you look at them, and they're not ashamed of the leg missing. They're going to adapt, overcome, and go on with life and make the most of every day.
Yeah, they're not worried about how they look or how they're perceived. And I think that, there are a couple of things that I think that we do as humans that project our own emotion on there, that the dog may feel sad or embarrassed or angry. But I don't believe that's true. I think that they live in the moment. I think that they've had the amputation, and you're right. They're like, oh, this doesn't hurt anymore. Great. Let's go do whatever we do, right? I don't think they carry the baggage that we carry as humans around amputation.
I would totally agree with that. And I think part of the issue with a lot of people feeling like their pets are depressed after amputation is simply their reaction to pain medication.
That is a good point.
It can look like depression when you're not used to seeing your dog zonked out on gabapentin, for example. And
yeah.
Well, I wanted to share, too, talking about how quickly they bounce back. I can't tell you how many times that I was contacted, typically by the pet owner, after their dog has had an amputation and, busy. And so by the time, I can get to them, maybe a week or two after amputation. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Or if it is really soon, it's like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of resources I can give them. I go back for the follow-up and it's like, don't really need me anymore. So they do, bounce back quickly. And a lot of it is just, playing that part of, again, a support system for the owner and, telling them what they're doing right and helping them to kind of skew the things that they could do better. I know one of the things that I read on your website was, it's better to hop on 3 legs than to limp on 4. So again, with cancer, with trauma, some of these traumas leave extensive nerve damage, which can cause, so much pain, and they'll start to self-mutilate and so forth. And I remember I had a specific client with a hound type dog, a retriever, and he just did not want to amputate. And I worked with that dog for a long time. And finally, the owner bit the bullet and never looked back. He's like, why didn't I do this 8 months ago? So
scary. It's scary to think about.
It is. But, again, with these resources that's on tripawds.com and talking to other people, yes, there are many different outcomes and every case is different. But I think that having that support of others and that community can help get past that trepidation and fear.
Why don't we talk a little bit then about the role of the rehabilitator in the role of rehabilitation in with amputation pets? And what that looks like. Yeah, and I'd love to hear your input, Jim and Rene.
I guess one of the things I realized, what I was kind of alluding to earlier, is, having the tools in the beginning, then the dogs tend to do really well. But I see also our role kind of long term, right? Because they are moving differently. There is a much higher caloric expenditure walking on 3 legs, negotiating an environment on 3 legs versus 4. So it certainly takes a cardiovascular toll. So in terms of using things like, swimming and underwater treadmill and endurance-based programs, I think that's really important, because sometimes when we get these diagnoses for our pets. They may not be in the best shape. They may be overweight. They may be, deconditioned. They may have comorbidities such as arthritis. And if they don't, again, over time, there's much more impact and stress on the remaining limbs. And, the neck is positioned differently. The back is held differently. And so, that can result in spinal pain, soft tissue tightnesses, sprains, strains, that you said that you noticed with your Frisbee playing with Jerry as well. So
there's a lot of compensatory stuff that can happen. And so I think it's important to at least have, the rehabber in your pocket, because as the dog ages, those things are going to, probably pop up.
It's true. Every dog is different, and we have had Jerry missing a front leg and Wyatt missing a rear leg for 12 years, and rehab is just so important. It's why we have the rehab grant at the tripawds.org, and it all boils down, it all begins with an understanding of the pet parent, that life is different, not worse, and that there are things we can do to help them live a happy life on 3 legs. And it's why our community exists, because so many times on certain social media platforms, all you hear is, he'll do great. Hugs, kisses, he'll be fine. And sure, they can, but to an extent, again, and it's our responsibility to understand that our dog is different and he's missing a front leg or a rear leg, or even cats. We've had a number of rehab grants go out to cats who have seen certified practitioners to understand the certain types of exercises that are best for your particular dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
And cats are amazing with 3 legs. Sometimes you might not even notice a cat has 3 legs because they're they adapt so well.
They really do. I like to tell people, don't tell the dogs, but cats actually do a lot better than dogs do it right away. Most of them, they bounce back faster. Key, though, what we found is that pain management. If the cat goes into surgery and comes home with good pain management, recovery is so much easier. It's the same for dogs. But cats, for some reason, quite often they come back with this really odd backward walking thing that it's like they're experiencing phantom pain, but they don't quite express it the same way as dogs. So when it happens, they rise up and jump back and howl, and it's really awful to watch videos of that. Yeah, and we see that quite a bit, so we call it cats walking backwards on our website if you want to search for it.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. I've not seen that.
It is. Yeah, a lot of vets haven't either, but because we're this little community of a very concentrated population of pets that all have the same types of issues, we see it quite a bit. I'd say at least once a month somebody posts about that.
We seem to handle it differently, and we just had a member post in the forums a video of their cat. They're, fairly new from amputation, just kind of sitting there and, standing there in the kitchen with other cats around, and all of a sudden it just flips up in the air, spins around, and darts towards its rear end as if it had been attacked from behind. Something startled the cat so badly that it jumped up, and then it started screaming, and then it kind of walked backwards a bit, and it's kind of distinct to the feline amputation recovery. But it's, again, comes down to other cat members jumping in and saying, you're not alone here, that happened to my cat, and the things they can do about it and getting the pain under control. And
then what you said about having a rehab therapist in your back pocket, that is absolutely spot on, because you may have a younger tripod right now, like we had Wyatt. He lost a leg at 8 months old, and as he aged, there were times when we thought, oh my God, he overdid it, he might have hurt himself. If you start out this tripod journey with a rehab therapist and you create that relationship, you have somebody to turn to, and you're not starting from scratch. You're not trying to relay this all over again to your vet. Here's what happened to my dog. Here's their story. You have somebody who already knows your animal's background, and if there's a problem, you can jump on that problem quicker. One thing that we discovered over the years, there's been a study done that says tripods are more prone to cruciate injuries, and it was a study done by a vet friend of ours at Colorado State. We see that a lot, and especially these days with so many overweight pets. A dog who loses a leg, they can still go through amputation if they're overweight, but it's going to make things a little more challenging, and we do tend to see more blown cruciates with those pets. So having that established relationship with a therapist, it's invaluable. It's golden. And especially as your animal ages, because another thing we learned from orthopedic vets is that all tripods over time will be more susceptible to osteoarthritis. They'll get it at a younger age than a four-legged animal, just from the fact that their body is moving in different ways and compensating. So it's not a deal breaker, but it's something to be aware of, and a rehab therapist can help you spot those signs that your pet is getting some signs of osteoarthritis and what you can do about it.
Yeah, right. And we can weight manage, and we can manage the osteoarthritis. Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah.
And be specific about it. Oftentimes I think of us as coaches, and kind of coaching the pet parent. And, what you said, Rene, about the CCL tears, I would imagine, one, that's definitely valid. And it probably doesn't matter if it's a front limb or a rear limb amputation, because if they're missing a hind limb, then all that stress is going on one back leg where that cruciate ligament is trying to stabilize at the knee. And if they're missing a front limb, then they tend to sit back and, use their back legs a lot more just in general. So either way, they're kind of set up for that number one orthopedic injury as is. The other thing I think is, you're talking about like going to the vet. I think that the rehabber is better equipped in most cases. In terms of knowing the equipment out there, the appropriate assistive device for that pet, and, being able to, give again, kind of instead of generalities, more specifics in terms of exercise prescription. And really a lot of times, as we've alluded to, it's what not to do. It's not so much what to do, but, what not to do to protect the remaining limbs and so forth. So we have the time, we, have researched and, have this knowledge base. So please use us, right? And especially in this day and age with COVID, I mean, the vets are so overwhelmed and so busy, and so many are not taking new patients. And, so that's where we can really utilize our expertise and help these guys out. So as we're drawing to a close here, I just wanted to ask you, we've mentioned Wyatt Ray Dog a few times. He was your road dog, and I read on your website that he passed away in 2020, which was a challenging year for all of us due to the pandemic. But do you want to say a few words in his honor? I know we've talked a lot about Jerry, but tell us a little bit about Wyatt.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Wyatt tends to live in Jerry's shadow sometimes, and I always felt kind of bad about that. But he was his own dog, like everybody says about their pets. Everyone has their own personalities, and Wyatt was a handful. But he was a German Shepherd who let you know he was a German Shepherd. As somebody said, he was an off-the-charts German Shepherd. But he taught us so much, and it was a joy to watch him grow into an old dog and an old fit dog. So we were very blessed to have that knowledge. It grew over time with Wyatt, but we did our best to keep him strong so that he could accompany us on the road and go to cool places with us. He lived on the road with us his entire 12 years almost.
That's amazing.
And, it was so cool. One of the things we discovered for him was a dog stroller, and you mentioned that earlier, but I never thought I'd be the type of person who pushed their dog in a stroller. But what we found was that even for an 80-pound shepherd, you get that dog out in the world, and they're part of your family again. They're part of the pack. They can go on long walks with you. So Wyatt had a stroller during the last years of his life, and it made such a huge difference. He still had his mind. He was still ready to go have fun with us. And the hardest part about deciding to let him go was that he was still mentally sharp, but his body was done. He had IVDD, and we really had to make that tough decision.
Right.
He was great, though. He was a really good spokesdog. He went to all the conferences with us. We did veterinary conferences with him. He was awesome.
I saw several videos of him in the stroller, barking, and more barking. But like you said, it allowed you to accommodate for his aging and the wear and tear over time on his body. And he could still, be part of your pack and out in the community. So that's awesome. One other thing I wanted to mention, Rene, is I understand that you're a jewelry maker, and on your website, there's also some swag in terms of jewelry and clothing, apparel that really champions the tripods. And so for folks out there that, either have a three-legged pet or know somebody that does, I think that's another great resource in terms of gift giving either to yourself or others.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. That's so nice of you. Yeah, at gifts.tripawds.com. We have an assortment of T-shirts, bumper stickers. I do make custom metal jewelry, so, a lot of people want their pet's name on the jewelry charm, or they want a slogan or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's
there's a reason we do that. It kind of boils down back to the origin of the name Tripawds. At UC Davis, we heard vets and techs calling three-legged dogs tripods, like P-O-D, and I thought, I went home and I registered the name Tripawds.com with the paw in the middle to kind of empower and take that back. And the Tripawds logo is kind of a merit badge for those who go the extra length to, learn what's best for their dog, and a badge of honor. The three paws in the circle, it's a badge of honor, and we love people spreading the word that it is better to hop on three legs than limp on four.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Jim and Rene, as we're closing up, can you just tell us a little bit more about Be More Dog and where people can get that book?
Certainly. So Be More Dog is more or less our memoir, our travels with Jerry on the road, and how tripods came to be. And the title stems from a keynote address Rene and I gave at a canine cancer conference in 2012, where our message was to follow your dog's lead when it comes to recovery care and be more dog. And it kind of covers all the lessons that Jerry taught us during those first 2 years on the road about resilience and acceptance and perseverance and awareness and gratitude and so much more, that we finally put it into a book, and it's available at bemoredog.net or wherever people get their books.
Nice.
I do mention, for animal lovers out there, it's got a foreword by Mutt's creator, Patrick McDonald.
I saw that.
We love Mutts, and we had the opportunity to meet him once, and he drew a little caricature of Jerry for us. So I think animal lovers will love it, whether or not
amazing.
They have three-legged dogs.
I have one of his books. He's great. And just to, again, circle back, there's also 3 other books, 3 Legs and a Spare, which you said is kind of the Bible for those out there that are doing the research. Loving Life on 3 Legs, I think, is a little bit more like rehab focused. Is that true? Yeah. And then we mentioned the cats, and there's cool tips for tripod cats. So,
and that one, we've never had a tripod cat, but the Tripawds community, again, really came together and helped develop.
Crowdsourced.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Cat members really came together and threw a bunch of content together with that for us.
Nice. And can you guys let the audience know where they can find you?
Certainly. So we talked about a lot of assistance programs, and those are all available and outlined at tripawds.org. All of the community resources, the podcast, the forums, the blogs, the live chat is at tripawds.com. On Facebook and Twitter, we're at Tripawds. On Instagram, we're at Tripawds Community. And pretty much find us anywhere online when you type in Tripawds.
Yes, and we should again emphasize that it's TRIPAWDS. And I like how you took back that word and again the emphasis on there are still 3 or maybe even 2 others paws left. So let's focus on that, not the one that's missing.
Yep.
Well, it was great to talk with you both. Thank you so much. I learned so much today.
I learned a ton too, but you're also very pleasant and entertaining.
This is so fun. We love talking with you. Thank you so much for having us.
And I could talk all day about it, so thank you very much for helping us get the word out.
Thank you.
Bet.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our show. Follow us on Facebook or on Instagram at PetAbility Podcast.
For more information about Kathy's books and living with blind dogs, please go to enableyourpet.com. Thank you, and please tune in next time.